places. And they said, no, we don't want the acorn story. Apparently it wasn't a big deal. So he just did it himself, and he knew that. And then later, whenever they started slamming him, he could say, I brought this to you first. It was fabulous. But there were a lot of conference calls whenever things were happening. A story was developing, and we would want to go, and we would want to fight. And he would say, no, just hold your cards a little bit longer. Something better is going to happen, and then we'll really have them. So he knew when not to fight, and I think sometimes that we forget that too. We always want to be reactionary because everything is happening in a 24-hour news cycle, and something gets said, and so we just want to snap, snap, snap. We got to get ahead. We got to get ahead. Sometimes you just got to let the guy on the other side, give him just a little more rope because he'll probably use it. So just hold your cards for a little bit. Andrew did that more than people realize because they always saw the guy who was just out there saying, go to hell. But he also knew how to hold his cards. And I wish more people saw that side of him. But they didn't get to, and so I wanted to make sure you guys knew about it. Another thing Sun Tzu said is that he will win who knows how to handle both a superior and inferior force. And I talk about Eric Bollard because it's the perfect example of him doing this. So Eric Bollard, for those of you who don't know who he is, it's okay. He's a no one. But there's a lot of people who do know who he is because Andrew started his own little warpath against him on Twitter, and it was hysterical. Eric Bollard works for a company called Media Matters, and Media Matters is a small-ish company, but what they do is they write responses to the conservative media, and they push a lot of progressive narratives. And you can see what's posted on Media Matters and watch the MSNBC host read them by talking points that night. It is unbelievable how much the news organizations just pull their blogs and just read it on air. So they do carry a narrative weight, but they are small. Well, Andrew talked about this, and he started engaging Eric Bollard. And so he just brought to life this guy. Who's Eric Bollard? Why does anyone care about him? Why does Andrew tweet him every day about something that he wrote? Who is this guy? And they started saying, oh, he works for Media Matters. Well, what's Media Matters? And that opened the door to the George Soros money funding complex. So in one stroke, Andrew was not only punching down at some poor little guy who just happened to work at Media Matters, but he was also punching up at the George Soros media complex. Sometimes we have to be wise about who we engage and how we engage them. From a very small time, I actually didn't come to this place in my life working in media and politics because I saw something one day and decided, this is what I need to do. Nope, it was ingrained for me from when I was 5 years old. This is what you're going to do. Government is important. My father was actually an organizer in Oklahoma. Most people don't realize that Oklahoma was actually a really progressive state. Within my lifetime, actually within the last 15 years, Oklahoma turned red in their legislature. Up until then, it had always been Democrat. I remember when Oklahoma elected their first Republican governor. But most people think, oh, it's just a red state. And really what it is, it's a progressive state. They're not socially, they're very conservative. But we were founded, we were given statehood by a progressive president. And so everybody since then, it was just always very progressive. And so my father really got involved when I was a child. And my birthday is in October, which happens to always fall before November. So every single one of my birthday parties was free labor for a mail-out. And so that's what we did. So I have always been in the political activist arena. And so I was always taught that you need to make sure when you engage people, you do it in a way that you don't necessarily lose influence with them later. It's certainly whenever you're engaging people on the right. You know, I mean, I actually worked at the Oklahoma legislature. I didn't put that in my introduction, but I actually worked in the Oklahoma legislature before I came to Breitbart. And I remember working in that office, and I worked for 2 Republican freshmen, and it was insane because it was 2 freshmen, and they were both kind of Tea Party guys who came in. One of them was a major hothead. He was a little guy, and I didn't know what he was going to do every day. It was great. One day he got thrown out of the speaker's office. One day, he was out yelling at the media. It great. And then the other guy was a very calm man, had 3 sweet kids, big guy, and he was just a teddy bear. And every time he saw me, he was like, hi! And it was just hysterical to work for the two of them in a very small office. And Glenn, the big guy, he did large group insurance, and he thought that a good idea to fight the Obamacare stuff was to go for the exchanges, to actually do the Medicaid expansion. He thought that would be a good thing. I didn't agree with him on it, but I knew that he was a good guy and that this is what he did, so it really didn't matter if I agreed with him on it or not. I was still going to answer his phones, you know. But whenever the right came to us, and I was called the right hand of Obama just for working for him. And I had people call me names, I had people threaten me, and I remember being on the phone and some guy calling me all sorts of names I wouldn't repeat. And I thought, I think I'm changing my position. So sometimes we need to remember how to engage and get with the enemy, but also remember that we might need them for another fight later. So to keep our friends and to remember that we can engage and be passionate about it. And I remember, actually I was talking to Mike about this on the way up here. Whenever Andrew, we would engage passionately with Andrew. Well, I never really did, but I saw all the other editors do that. And they would get really passionate. And I remember saying, you know, I had a boss at Foundation whenever I worked there, and he would be, you know, he could yell and he could get really in your face. And I made the decision that if he ever did that to me, I'd just walk out the door. But it was always out of anger. You know, he was actually angry. And I would see Andrew engage with them, and it never to me felt angry. You know, it was just passion. And that's okay. We want to have passion, not anger, certainly with our side when we're engaging. Okay, moving right along. I promise I'm going to have good, bright stories.
Sometimes he was angry.
Sometimes he was angry. I'd like to talk, I may talk about my whole relationship with Andrew later and what it consisted of. But,